G'day, this is Drew. This video is about anti-Semitism in Australia. Now, when you've got packs of masked men congregating outside a national landmark and chanting for the murder and lynching of a minority group, you may think progressives would feel a little concerned about the direction in which the country is heading. I know I did. I certainly thought these scenes were reminiscent of 1930s Nazi Germany. But thankfully there is a nuance here. Thank God this lynch mob wasn't just targeting any old minority group. If this lynch mob had been chanting, "Where are the wogs?" I know I personally would have been in trouble. Had they been chanting, "Where are the blacks?" everyone could condemn it. We could all recognise this for what it was, a racist, disgusting mob of angry young men looking to start another Cronulla race riot. But thankfully, they were only chanting, "Where's the Jews?" and "Fuck the Jews," while burning the Israeli flag and chucking flares everywhere. Thank God, we don't have a problem here, Australia, because Jews don't count. That is the beautiful message of a recent Crikey special investigation conducted by Antoinette Lattouf and Cameron Wilson. These progressive, powerful journalists watched the footage from that night, and instead of feeling normal human emotions at the sight of a racist lynch mob braying for Jewish blood, emotions like repulsion, disgust, anger, fear, they decided to make it their personal mission to discredit any evidence of anti-Semitism at the rally. Now, millions of people have been murdered as a direct result of this poisonous ideology, this poisonous anti-Semitic hatred. But don't stress, this footage simply had to have been edited, doctored, fabricated. This had to have been a plot by the global Jewish conspiracy to defame a bunch of fine, upstanding citizens. In his reporting, very important to put that word in inverted commas, Cameron consistently used the phrase edited videos, insinuating that the footage had been edited with new audio overlaid over the original footage. So, did the New South Wales police find that the footage had been doctored, as Cameron and Antoinette tried very hard to insinuate? From their celebrations and the way the media reported on their so-called research, you'd think that the whole thing had been made up. The audio secretly produced and edited by the Mossad in some dingy Tel Aviv security facility. No evidence of anti-Semitism, 9 News blared. SBS News went with a similar headline. Soon my inbox filled up with attacks. LMFAO, what's your excuse now? One bloke messaged me. Another, notorious racist Drew Pavlu uses this video to stoke tensions. When will he apologise? The brave anarchist Nazi hunter account Alt Media Watch took a very similar line of attack. Admit that you pushed a lie to demonise Arabs, he said. It's truly fascinating that an anarchist would immediately accept the word of the very distinguished New South Wales police force when it comes to confronting racist violence. Now, lost in the coverage is what the New South Wales police actually said. Now let's look at what the New South Wales police actually said.
Those audio and visual files have not been doctored. They are simply cuts from a more parent file, if I call it that way. When examined, the parent file and the video compilation have the same audio and visual. And from that, the expert has been able to conclude they are the words that we used. Obviously, subtitles are someone that is an opinion of someone putting those subtitles on there of what they hear. We have obtained several statements from persons who were present outside the Opera House who believe that they heard the words "gas the Jews" that evening. The expert has made an examination of the audio and visual files which were taken from outside the Opera House on that occasion. That's where he has concluded with overwhelming certainty that the words used were "where's the Jews."
Quote, the audio and visual files have not been doctored. The subtitles represent somebody's opinion based on what they hear, but the expert's view is that the chant featured the words "where's the Jews" rather than "gas the Jews." The New South Wales police statement also contains the following line, conveniently cropped from Antoinette Lattouf's announcement about the news. Quote, police have also obtained statements from several individuals who attended the protest indicating they heard the phrase "gas the Jews." And when asked whether there was evidence of other anti-Semitic chants used at the rally, the New South Wales police spokesperson replied, certainly. So that's it. That's the great moral victory for Cameron and Antoinette. The mob was still chanting for the lynching and the murder of Jews, but they used a slightly different phrase from the one so many of us heard in the original video.
Smithies, are they booing me?
No, they're saying boo earns, boo earns.
Are you saying boo or boo earns? I was saying boo earns.
Listening back to the footage, it sure does sound like they were chanting "gas the Jews," but in fact they were chanting "gas the juice, gas the juice." Open your fridge up, Australia. Check whether you've got apple juice or orange juice. If you can condemn these people for chanting that they want apple juice, you're a hypocrite. The hypocrisy of the Zionists never ceases to sicken me to my very core. Now, as to what they were actually chanting, where are the Jews? That's such a beautiful message when you think about it. No evidence of anti-Semitism here. When packs of angry young men chant, "Where's the Jews?" while burning Israeli flags, it's obvious they're simply looking for a bunch of Jews to share a beer with. They wanted an interfaith dinner, and anybody suggesting otherwise, or condemning their right to juice at a rally that makes you thirsty, is a disgusting racist. And apparently I myself am one. How could I? These were clearly just a bunch of Aussie larrikins letting off a bit of steam. What do people think they would have done had they found a Jew that night? They would have thrown a shrimp on the barbie with them.
There's plenty of shrimps on the barbie.
They would have lovingly embraced, like the beautiful reunion at the end of Shawshank Redemption. A beautiful film, by the way. I encourage everyone to see it. Really, it's beautiful. It's fucking beautiful. Now, thank you, Cameron and Antoinette. My deepest apologies. Now, let me give everybody a refresher on all the violent incitement against Jews we have witnessed take place in Australia over these past couple months. On the night of October 7, anti-Israel protesters took to the streets of Sydney in celebration. Solidarity rallies took place prior to any Israeli military assault on Gaza. Men lit fireworks from moving cars in West Sydney, celebrating the largest massacre of Jews in a single day since the Holocaust. That night, as I watched footage showing Hamas terrorists going door-to-door massacring Israeli families, a Sydney imam addressed a huge crowd. Then, on October 9, the masked thugs came out to chant the Jews and "Where are the Jews?" on the steps of the Opera House while burning the Israeli flag and chucking around flares. Beautiful, beautiful, nothing to see here. We saw comments in the Palestine Action Group Sydney Facebook group. Peaceful protests, what's the use of them? Start slaughtering the Jews. The Holocaust time has come. You need to protest next to a synagogue at least, and you need to publicly behead a Jew. These comments were left up unmoderated for at least 24 hours. Shortly after, graffiti began to appear on the sides of Jewish homes in Melbourne. "Kill Jews, Jew lives here." Jewish Australian businesses were plastered with anti-Israel boycott stickers despite no connections whatsoever with the Israeli state. Men at Melbourne Anti-Israel rallies yelled out hateful statements like "Kill all Israelis, death to every Israelis," and the men around them clapped them on the back and laughed.
Death to every Israeli!
People began to chant "Kaba, Kaba, Ya Yahud." This chant has been found to be a hate crime in Britain. People have been arrested for this chant. This chant seeks to portray this conflict as an ancient religious conflict between Muslims and Jews by linking it to stories in the Quran where the Prophet Muhammad, blessings be upon him, expelled Jews and massacred Jews at the town of Kaba. We had brave speakers at rallies across Melbourne who told us Hamas is doing exactly what it has to do.
Hamas is doing exactly what they have to do.
This guy was a public school teacher in Melbourne, by the way. We had people at the Melbourne rallies telling us every single act by Hamas is a legitimate act of resistance, including the slaughter of Israeli families on October 7th.
Everything that has happened is a legitimate response to occupation and siege. And our message to all of those who ask us to condemn is this: when have you ever condemned Israeli actions and killings and occupation?
When family members of hostages held by Hamas visited Melbourne, we had protesters and activists in Melbourne go out to protest the families at the hotels at which they were staying. We had a bunch of protesters congregate outside a synagogue in the Melbourne heavily Jewish suburb of Caulfield, chanting "Tel Aviv, Pufters, go back to Tel Aviv."
Hey, homo! Hey, homo! The highest pufta rate in the world is in Tel Aviv. You're one of them homos, aren't you?
We had absolute fuckwits holding up Hamas military propaganda symbols at the rallies in Melbourne. The downward triangle, everybody knows across Twitter, this is a sign used by supporters of Hamas. So we had people holding up downward triangle signs in Melbourne at the protests, indicating their full support for Hamas. And we even had people chant ceasefire now behind these Hamas support military signs. We had Hash Tayer, the CEO of Purgatory, one of the leaders of the pro-Palestine movement in Australia, nonchalantly go up to a bloke holding up a sign in support of Hezbollah, which is a proscribed terror organisation in Australia, and ask the guy, oh, do you condemn the Israeli occupation forces, and put this up on his story. No condemnation of Hezbollah whatsoever, which is a prescribed terror group. We've had people tag and graffiti synagogues with the term Free Gaza. The tagging and graffiti of Jewish community centres and synagogues is just blatant anti-Semitism. Now, anti-Semitism in Sydney is even worse potentially. Back when these masked thugs were chanting, "Where's the Jews?" outside the Sydney Opera House, with many eyewitnesses saying that they heard "Gas the Jews" as well.
Where's the Jews? 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 Where's the Jews?
Police were actually telling the Jewish community of Sydney, stay away from the central business district. They were telling Jewish office workers to go home because they could not guarantee the safety of Jewish Australians in the central business district of Australia's largest city. What the actual fuck? That is insanity. That is insanity. Why would Jewish Australian office workers have to be at threat? Activist Rioters Bloc handing out genocidal anti-Jewish chant sheets. Palestine is Arab, settlers go back home. Settler go back home, Palestine is ours alone. Wow, that sounds like a call for coexistence and peace and a two-state solution. They're calling for the ethnic cleansing of 7 million Jews from Israel. Settler go back home, Palestine is ours alone. So Jews can't live there. What the actual hell? How is this acceptable? Millions of Jews in Israel are descended from Jewish communities across the Middle East and North Africa that were expelled from their historic homelands due to anti-Semitism. And they've got nowhere else to go. They don't have dual citizenship. Where are they supposed to go? Settler go back home, apparently. Go home where? They're calling for ethnic cleansing. This is wrong. This is wrong. This is sick. People should condemn it. I don't understand why I'm the only one seemingly condemning this shit from a progressive angle. From Gadigal to Gaza, from Redfern to Jaffa, long live the Intifada. We all know what the second Intifada consisted of. There were hundreds of suicide bombing attacks against Jewish civilians in Israel. Hundreds of suicide bombing attacks. They're saying we should have an Intifada from Gadigal to Gaza. What, so radical First Nations activists in Australia are seemingly endorsing a suicide bombing campaign? What is achieved by just like random bloodshed against civilians? I'm a progressive and I'm against this shit because it's fucking insane. I don't want suicide bombing attacks against civilians. For fuck's sake. We had Trotskyist activists at the University of Sydney use images from the October 7 massacre, the case for a global intifada. The case for a global intifada? Suicide attacks against people all across the world? This is fucking crazy, guys. This is craziness. Nick Reimer, the head of the NTU academic union at the University of Sydney, no progressive should feel the need to publicly condemn any choices by the Palestinian resistance. Doing so just adds to the perception that their cause is unjust. Western Sydney jumping castle guy refuses the Zionist blood money of a Jewish school that was trying to hire a jumping castle. A Jewish school? Zionist blood money? Another incident at a Sydney rally, filmed by Russian state television associate Diogo Correa, a guy in Sydney who's previously shared the protocols of the Elders of Zion on his Telegram.
Inshallah, one day will come where these Israeli dogs will go on their feet and kiss our feet. But inshallah, one day. Fuck the police. What's they gonna do, man? Fuck them. They can't do shit. Nothing's gonna stop me, inshallah.
Clearly they're talking about peaceful coexistence there, guys. Of course, no such thing as anti-Semitism here. 3 men arrested in Sydney after performing Hitler salutes outside the Sydney Jewish Museum. Sydney mosques holding memorial services for Hezbollah fighters, a brutal terrorist group responsible for massive ethnic cleansing in Syria against Sunni Muslims, as well as the terror bombing of a Jewish community centre in Buenos Aires, which slaughtered 85 Argentinian Jews. We have videos of Hezbollah fighters talking openly of ethnically cleansing Sunni civilians from Syria. And there are mosques in Australia, in Sydney, holding memorial services for Hezbollah? This is insanity. You would October 7 too, after 76 years of colonial terror, again justifying massacres of civilians. Open chants for the Houthis. Open chants for the Houthis in the streets of Sydney. The Houthis are a terrorist organisation with the term "curse the Jews" in their logo. They literally use Nazi salutes. They use Nazi salutes because the Nazis used them. This is one of the most anti-Semitic organisations on earth, and people are chanting for the Houthis in the streets of Sydney, as the Houthis commit war crimes by launching missiles at international civilian cargo ships that have nothing to do with Israel. They've shot missiles at cargo ships that were bringing palm oil to Italy. Insanity. And as we speak, the Houthis are blockading water access and food access to the city of Taiz. 500,000 civilians blockaded by the Houthis. And we have these white guys in Sydney chanting, "Up the Houthis." What the actual The Houthis are blockading humanitarian access to 24 million Sudanese civilians at risk of famine and war. There are 24 million Sudanese civilians right now who are in dire need of humanitarian assistance. And the only way that this humanitarian assistance can enter Sudan is via sea, via Red Sea access. And the Houthis are blockading humanitarian access to 24 million Sudanese civilians. And we've got white guys chanting "Up the Houthis" in the streets of Sydney. Sorry, 24 million Sudanese civilians, you're going to have to starve because this white uni student in Sydney feels really radical and cool when he chants "Up the Houthis, up the Houthis." Fucking craziness. What the hell is happening here? We had a radical hate preacher linked to ISIS, Wissam Haddad, in southwest Sydney, telling his congregants,
towards the end of times when the Muslims will be fighting the Jews, the trees will speak, the stone will speak, and they'll say, "O Muslim, O believer, there is a Yahudi behind me, come and kill him." Nobody come and tell me, "But brother, this is the Zionists, it's not really the Jews." There was no Zionists at the time of the Prophet ﷺ. There was Jews, Yahud, and they were addressed this way.
The New South Wales police found that didn't rise to the level of incitement to violence and hate speech. What the actual hell? How is that acceptable in Australia, a multicultural, diverse society, where people are saying in the end times there will be an apocalyptic race war between Muslims and Jews and you should go out and kill Jews? This is insanity. So there you have it. This compilation of brutal anti-Semitism on the rise in Australia, and progressives are supposed to turn a blind eye towards it because it's not fashionable or trendy to talk about anti-Semitism. I don't understand the blind spot that progressives have when it comes to anti-Semitism. Jews are a minority group that have historically faced absolutely atrocious persecution throughout centuries and centuries. Pogroms, racist violence, expulsions, and then culminating in the horrific Holocaust. Within our lifetime, we saw 6 million Jews exterminated because they were born Jews. 6 million Jews exterminated because they were born Jews by Nazi Germany. I've met Holocaust survivors. I've seen the ghostly tattoos of their camp numbers engraved into their arms. I've met Holocaust survivors before. I've seen their tattoos. I went to Auschwitz. I saw the detonated crematoria, the gas chambers that the Nazis blew up as they tried to retreat before the advancing Soviet army. I saw that with my own eyes. I saw a pond in which the ashes of hundreds of thousands of Jews were scattered. Hundreds of thousands of people, their ashes scattered in just this small, tiny, dark black pond. And you feel this horrific sense of evil in the air when you're at Auschwitz. That human beings are capable of doing this to one another. And yet the poisonous ideology that underlaid the Holocaust is back and it's rising. I've seen the consequences of that. And that is why I'm so haunted by the resurgence of anti-Semitism. I was so haunted by October 7, the largest single-day massacre of Jews since the Holocaust, and the fact that so many activists across the entire Western world were taken to the streets to celebrate it. Even people I thought were my friends. I was shocked by that. It sickened me to my core. It scared me. It actually frightened me. I'm haunted by the resurgence in anti-Semitism that we've seen since October 7. People don't even try and separate the Israeli government from the Israeli people when they criticize the Israeli government. I myself, I'm a strident critic of the Israeli government. I really, really stridently oppose Netanyahu. I hate Ben Gvir. I hate Smotrich. I hate the extremist settlers. I hate their poisonous Kahanist ideology. Kahanism is a terrorist ideology, but people conflate Kahanism with Zionism, just the idea that Jews should have a state. And it's sick, it's wrong. They call for the purging of 7 million Jews based on the actions of extremists. And it's wrong. You can be a critic of the Israeli government without saying that all 7 million Jews should be purged from Israel so that the entire Middle East is cleared of Jews. This is insanity. That's genocidal talk. For some reason, the idea of apocalyptic race war against Jews is acceptable on the far left. For some reason, I don't understand it. I'm a progressive precisely because I hate the Holocaust, I hate anti-Semitism, I hate racist violence, I hate racist dehumanization. Whether it's Islamophobia or anti-Semitism, I'm against racist dehumanization of people based on their ethnicity, based on their religion. I'm against that. I spent 4 or 5 years campaigning against the Chinese government's persecution of Uyghur Muslims simply because they are Muslim. I've spent years campaigning against Islamophobia. And what I just hate now is that people are using the same tropes of Islamophobia, but they apply it to Jews. That all Jews are extremists, that all Jews are supposedly terrorists because of the actions of Israel. And they want to purge Jews from society, and it's wrong. I hate that. If you're a progressive, you're not supposed to talk about this, apparently. Well, the reason I signed up to the progressive cause was because I oppose blood and soil race nationalism. I don't believe in a world where people are defined by their ethnicity at birth, and it's a world of racial struggle against one another based on whether you're born a settler or a colonizer, or you're born white or you're born black. I don't agree with such a world. That's why I was initially attracted to the progressive cause. That's why I call myself a progressive, because I'm opposed to blood and soil race nationalism. And whatever the online far left want to do, I will continue to call out incitement to racial violence in Australia, incitement to religious hatred in Australia, whether it's coming from Israeli extremists or pro-Palestine extremists. I'm going to continue to call that out. When you come to Australia, you have to leave behind racial hatreds. You have to leave behind religious hatreds. This is the only way that Australia can function as a peaceful society. We are a pluralistic, diverse country with more than 300 plus ancestries, with more than 300 plus languages spoken at home. So many families came to Australia precisely because they wanted to escape racial hatred, ethnic violence. People came to Australia to escape these things. My family came to Australia fleeing violence and racial hatred in Cyprus. My yaya's brother was killed by a Turkish sniper, and he fought for the Greek Cypriot Liberation Outfit. But you don't see me going out into the streets and attacking Turkish Australians, because they're Australians just like I'm an Australian. When you come to Australia, you have to leave behind religious and racial hatreds at the door. You have to. It's the only way that Australia can work. It's the only way that Australia can function. A peaceful, pluralistic, diverse society. We don't want racial hatred here. We don't want religious hatred here. I want neighbourhoods where people can live side by side with their neighbours in peace, regardless of their cultural background, regardless of their ethnic, religious background. That's all I want. I want religious, cultural, ethnic, pluralism and harmony and peace. Multicultural peace. That's all I want. And you have to leave behind the racial and religious hatreds at the door when you come to Australia. That's the only way it's ever going to work. It's the only option. The only option. That's why we have to call out and oppose always incitement to racial hatred, incitement to racial violence in Australia, whether it's anti-Arab or whether it's anti-Jewish. We have to oppose it. It's the only way we'll ever have peace here in Australia. Now, if you like my video, please remember to like and subscribe, share it around. If you want to support my work, have more videos like this, subscribe to my Patreon. I'll be putting out a lot more YouTube videos this year, combating the extremism of the tankies, the fascists, all those who want to try and destroy democracy in favor of a world of bloodshed and ethnic violence. I'm fucking opposed to that. I'm going to fight that. Thank you.